They said building a world in space was impossible. Then one physicist designed a place that could hold millions of people, and almost nobody took it seriously. But here's the strange part. The idea may be more realistic today than ever before. Back in 1974, physicist Gerard K. O'Neill proposed something that sounded like science fiction. A gigantic rotating cylinder floating in space. Not a spacecraft. Not a station. An entire world. At the time, people laughed. Why would anyone leave Earth? But fast forward to today. The global population has exploded. Climate pressures continue to grow. Resources are becoming harder to manage. And suddenly, a question that once sounded ridiculous feels surprisingly reasonable. What if Earth wasn't our only home? The answer starts with a structure so massive it almost feels impossible. Imagine a cylinder stretching 26 kilometers long and over 6 kilometers wide. Large enough to contain forests, farms, rivers, mountains, and entire communities. But that's not even the craziest part. This habitat wouldn't orbit Earth like the International Space Station. Instead, it would sit in a special region of space called a Lagrange point, a gravitational sweet spot where it could remain stable with minimal energy. And this is where it gets weird. To build this artificial world, we wouldn't need to tear apart planets. The Moon alone contains enough material to construct multiple cylinders. Nearby asteroids could provide even more resources. Piece by piece, robots and automated factories could assemble an entire civilization in space. But building the structure is only the beginning. Because a giant metal cylinder isn't gravity doesn't exist. It's what happens inside that changes everything. Sits at the heart of the O'Neill cylinder. And the solution is surprisingly simple. Spin it. The entire structure would rotate once every 2 minutes. As it spins, people standing inside would feel pushed toward the outer surface. To them, it would feel almost identical to Earth's gravity. No floating, no drifting, just normal life. But here's where things become extraordinary. The cylinder wouldn't just provide gravity. It would control nature itself. Massive mirrors built into the structure would redirect sunlight inside. Want longer days? Easy. Need cooler temperatures? Adjust the mirrors. Every sunrise, sunset, season, and weather pattern could be engineered. Imagine living in a world where storms only happen if humans allow them. And that's when things changed. Because the goal stopped being survival. The goal became perfection. Artificial mountains could rise from the landscape. Rivers could flow through valleys. Forests could stretch across the interior surface. Water harvested from icy comets would feed ecosystems and agriculture. Food would be grown locally. Energy would come from vast solar arrays covering the outside of the habitat. At first glance, it sounds like a paradise. A cleaner Earth. A more efficient Earth. A controllable Earth. But here's the twist nobody talks about. The more control humans gain over an environment, the more vulnerable that environment becomes. Because what happens when an entire world depends on machines never failing? And that's where the real challenge begins. Most people think the hardest part is building the O'Neill cylinder. They're wrong. Keeping it alive is far more difficult. Every drop of water, every breath of air, every piece of waste, everything must be recycled almost perfectly. One major system failure could affect millions of people. But that's not even the biggest threat. Space is dangerous. Tiny asteroid impacts happen constantly. Most would be harmless. Some wouldn't. A single serious collision could damage critical infrastructure and trigger emergencies unlike anything experienced on Earth. And this is where it gets weird. The very thing designed to save humanity could become one of the most complex machines ever created. A self-contained world suspended in the emptiness of space. Yet despite the risks, people are already discussing versions of this future. Even billionaires and space companies are exploring concepts inspired by O'Neill's vision. Why? Because the reward is almost unimaginable. A civilization no longer limited by the surface of one planet. Millions of people living among the stars. Perhaps billions. Maybe even trillions. What once sounded like fantasy is slowly moving toward possibility. And that's the shocking revelation. The question is no longer whether humans can imagine worlds beyond Earth. The question is whether we can build them before we need them. Because one day, future generations may look up at the night sky and see something unexpected. Not stars, not planets, but entire human-made worlds glowing in the darkness. And if that future arrives, will the O'Neill cylinder be humanity's greatest achievement? or the beginning of a completely new chapter no one can predict.